In today's episode of the Pathfind Presents podcast, I got a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Marie Forshaw, and she's heading over from the folks over at Apprentice. And Apprentice is essentially one platform to turn molecules into medicine. So essentially, that's what the website gives away for us. And today we want to really deep dive into what that really means, how Apprentice is being used and by whom, and also how Marie is thinking about growth for the company. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Lucas.
Of course, yeah. So maybe give us a quick insight. In your perspective, what is Apprentice all about?
So Apprentice is about helping get medicine to patients faster. And to do that, we offer a cloud-based manufacturing platform for the people who make those drugs that patients need. Do it better, do it faster, do it with higher quality, and do it cheaper so that patients can benefit.
Very succinct, very clear. Now, maybe tell us a bit more about the organizations. What makes a great fit? How does an organization need to be structured in order to be able to really benefit from Apprentice?
Sure. So really, it's anybody who makes a drug. And there's a lot of different stages, different types of drugs that go into the overall process. And so what we really look for is someone who is in the post-R&D phase. So a new drug has been discovered, a new type of molecule, a new way of doing things, and they're looking to scale up that newly discovered drug to something that a patient can eventually consume. And within the pharma market, that's all different types of companies, all the way from your big pharma companies who do their own manufacturing that have household names like your Johnson & Johnson, to contract manufacturers who all they do is manufacture drugs for those folks who are discovering new molecules and doing that R&D piece, and then all the way down to biotech startups with a lot of the really cutting edge cell and gene therapies that are coming to market. These are most often produced by startups just like Apprentice. And so we're able to serve that whole range of the market with our cloud-based platform because, much like the core tenets of SaaS and cloud, it's much easier to deploy, it's much faster to get going. It's designed for the end users who can configure their manufacturing process within our system directly without having IT overhead. And it really can help them scale as they try to move their drug product through that process all the way to full scale commercial production to reach as many patients as possible.
So what would you say, who would be the individual within the organization that would sort of raise the flag and say, we need something like Apprentice in our organization?
It's really the person who's in charge of that manufacturing process. And the way that pharma manufacturing is structured, this can have many different titles, which has been a really interesting challenge for us to solve from the marketing team's perspective. But typically it's someone who's a site head, they have a manufacturing operations title, and they are responsible for that end-to-end production process.
Makes sense. Now, when you think about those individuals, right? How do they learn about Apprentice? How do they hear about it? What's the steps in the journey that they go through in order to get started?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been an interesting thing for us to map. And so Apprentice is a startup ourselves, as I mentioned, and we have grown incredibly rapidly over the past 2 years. We're recently listed on the Inc. 5000 as one of the top 10% fastest growing customers or companies, excuse me. So to figure this out, to figure out how we get in touch with our buyer and how they want to learn about us and how they educate themselves on buying a system like ours has been a journey for us ourselves. And what we found is that pharma tends to be a bit behind what we would think a traditional tech buyer would be using. So for us, what that means is we want to do a lot of the more forward-thinking digital marketing that you see from modern SaaS platforms. So we do ABM targeted ads. We have a very big LinkedIn presence because we've seen that as a great way for folks to find us. But we also do some of the more traditional marketing channels like in-person shows, trade shows, working within industry groups and regional membership groups are all ways that our buyers want to educate themselves on new systems and how to bring it into their facilities.
Very cool. Now, what role would you say does the website play in their journey? How do you as a marketer think about the website for that type of product?
Yeah, so the traditional B2B website, you don't often think of as your storefront. There aren't transactions taking place on our website for people to actually buy our product. But we really see it as a tool for folks to educate themselves along that journey, and we use it as a content vehicle for that reason. And so we want our homepage to be very clear and very clearly articulate what we do. And then we also have very deep content in several different places on the site. So we talk about where that trade show presence is, so where we're going to be, so folks can come and connect with us. We also do great recaps of where we've been. So if folks are looking for that shows, they can find us that way. We have a deep content library and blog presence as well that help get our audience familiar with cloud platforms, which are newer for them, and really try to encourage folks to stay on the site as long as possible and continue to interact with our content. So we see it as a really important tool, the really first touch point to start articulating what Apprentice is all about and hopefully get them more and more interested further and further along that buyer journey with all of the great content that we have up there.
Very good. Now, when we think about a website a little bit, a lot of marketers we have on the show, they're very critical, right? They want to improve the page continuously. There's always something to do. Like, what would you say is the strength of the website as it is versus where do you see room for further, development and improvement?
It's a great question. Our website, we redesigned and relaunched really at the beginning of this year when we rolled out our new go-to-market message with the Tempo Manufacturing Cloud, which is essentially our product packaging and our product suite. And so I think that the website is very strong in representing that message and how our customers can understand it. I also think it has a great visual presence. So one of the things that sets Apprentice apart from other alternatives on the market is that we have an integrated wearable headset as well as a mobile app. And that really fits the needs of our end users who are in the pharma suite on the floor using their hands to actually manufacture drugs. And so by having those two hardware assets, it allows us to have a really nice visual presence with having stock footage and screenshots of those elements and those hardware devices being used in the real world in a pharma lab. And so that comes through very strongly in our branding as well. So I think that the messaging, the visual design is very strong on our website. We've also made a very concerted effort in the technical backend and making sure that our site is optimized for SEO. And so that folks can find us because we have spent so much time on the look and feel of it. So I think those are all strengths of the site. And where we're always continuing to develop is always continuing to push that content. And so refining the message on all those different pages as we get feedback from the market, from our customers, from sales cycles, from deployments, making sure that that feedback loop is really strong, as well as continuing to build out new ways and new types of contents for people to find us and to stay engaged with us. And I think a great example of that is we launched a life science glossary about a month ago that has all of the terms that somebody might be looking for when they're starting to educate themselves on this space. And we really want it to be a helpful resource for those folks so that they can get something useful out of content, which is always a great sign of valuable content, is that if it's helping our customers answer a question or solve a problem that they're having, and hopefully can start to view Apprentice as an expert in the space when they do eventually enter a buying cycle. So continuing to find ways to strengthen that content, different formats, different types to reach as many people as we can.
Gotcha. Okay, I see. Is there something that you've over the years as a marketer learned when it comes to actually, driving those conversions, for example, driving demo requests from the page? Is there any approaches, methods, tools that you've been, learning and picking up over the years that you think are helpful?
It's a really great question. I think that the technology and the best practices behind how to get someone to convert or take the action that you want on a site has evolved rapidly and continues to change all the time. So really staying on top of those best practices, having a team that is eager to educate themselves on how to best use the tools, how to best apply new technology from the mechanics or the tactical perspective, I think is hugely important. So that's one piece of it. But then I think always keeping in mind, like I was mentioning, if you can solve a challenge for someone, if you can connect with your audience or your potential buyer in a way that you are offering them value upfront, that's really the key to getting people to convert through the site.
Makes sense. Now, I would like to switch gears a little bit and talk about your journey as a marketer. Now, at first, there's so much content out there for marketers, right? You could keep reading and educating yourself. Like, where do you personally find, high quality information for your marketing practices?
I always look to my peers. It's been an interesting journey for me. Most of my marketing experience is within product marketing. So I have a natural affinity to be close to the product, to understand what our features are, how that's valuable, be able to articulate that from the technical to the business buyers. And so really using that foundation on understanding, what do people want, what do people need, I think has been really informative for developing a marketing strategy. So that's certainly one place, and using the peers that I have interacted with and the relationships I've built along that product marketing journey to consult for advice on, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about that. How's your company doing it? Have you done something like this before? Is obviously a very invaluable tool. And then I am certainly a podcast fan, kind of the normal marketing podcast that you would want to look for advice to. And, I find them interesting, not always to listen to their particular advocacy or the strategy that they're saying, but I find that it's a really good sounding board to think through some of the own challenges that I'm having in my business. So to kind of hear someone articulate and see, well, would that work for me? Would that not? Just being able to have that thought space by hearing someone talk about similar issues or challenges for their business, even if they don't have the right answer for you, I find is a really good exercise.
Very cool. As we're slowly moving towards the end of the interview, I would have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready for those?
Let's do it.
Very good. What is the last book that you read?
The last book that I read was not a business book in any way. It was called White Tiger. It was a really interesting book about a journey in India. It's also a Netflix movie. So I tend to not be a huge fan of business books. So I'm very big on reading for pleasure. And I found that book to be really compelling and really unique from anything that I have read recently.
What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
So we are thinking about how to do enterprise-wide deployments, enterprise-wide deals. So it's a very interesting challenge for us to go up market and figure out how to solve that big challenge for a company and partner with them, think about what that long-term relationship looks like and how our business grow together in order to serve that. And marketing has been a huge part in articulating that strategy and articulating the value and ROI in what that type of partnership looks like. So that's been our biggest initiative as of late.
What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
Oh boy. There's always something going on, but I think in startup, when you're at the stage that we are in early stages, you really want to think about, are we serving the business's needs? And how do we continue to grow and scale the team to meet those needs in the future? Kind of your classic startup challenges on how do you get started from nothing and how do you rapidly iterate on it? And then I always like to keep in mind, how is my team doing, especially in the context of burnout within startup world? I think you got to take care of your people if you want to achieve anything on the first 2 points that keep me up.
That makes sense. For the very last question, I would like to do a bit of time travel, right? If we go back to the days of Georgetown University, if you allow, right? So you're heading out of formal education into the world of business growth and the likes. What's the one advice that you would give yourself for your journey?
I would say, especially from the perspective of a young female, to not doubt yourself and to not undercut the value and the education that you can bring to an organization. I always akin the business world to when you're a kid, you think adults know everything. And then when you're an adult, you realize that they don't. So there's always something that you can offer. You always have a unique perspective that you can bring to the table, and just trust in your value and don't be afraid to share it.
Very cool. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today for the Pathway Presents podcast. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Apprentice, what's the one thing that people should remember?
We are bringing the cloud to pharma manufacturing, and it's going to help patients of every stripe and size. And at the end of the day, patients are all of us.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathway Presents.
Thank you.